Tonight, Ontario's Liberal leader makes big promises.
I don't deliver on this in my first term, I'll resign on the spot and give you back the power to choose someone else.
If elected, Stephen Del Duca pledges a 4-day work week and changing the voting system. We'll have the details. And
I smashed my time. It's amazing out here.
an exciting day for runners who participated in the Scotiabank Marathon, the first in-person race since the pandemic struck. Plus,
this is a kind of rare opportunity to see this moment in history through photography.
a snapshot of the Caribbean in the post-emancipation period will take you to the AGO's new exhibit.
This is CBC Late Night News.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Shannon Martin. The provincial election may be months away, but Ontario's Liberal leader is making some big campaign-style promises. Stephen Del Duca and the Liberals are hoping up to make some lost ground. You may remember last election the party suffered its worst ever result. Lorenda Redekop has our top story.
Our leader, Stephen Del Duca.
Some early election promises by the Ontario Liberal leader, speaking at the party's annual general meeting.
We'll reform our elections by introducing ranked ballots.
Stephen Del Duca says having voters pick not only their top choice, but also ranking who's second will bring out a more positive side to politics.
It won't make sense anymore for leaders and parties to demonize one another. Ranked ballots will reward parties that find common ground and that speak to voters' hopes, not only their fears.
And he promised this.
If I don't deliver on this in my first term, I'll resign on the spot and give you back the power to choose someone else.
This voting reform advocate likes that the Liberals are pledging to allow ranked ballots for municipal elections, but doesn't like it under the party system.
And ranked ballots will actually entrench the dinosaur parties that have already been trading power back and forth for 150 years. The first half of the speech was all about how he wants to be more collaborative and work with other parties. And then he introduced this policy that all the other parties hate, and he didn't reach out to anyone on it.
6 years ago, as Prime Minister Justin Trudeau campaigned, he promised electoral reform. It hasn't happened. He didn't use the same language as Stephen Del Duca.
Wow, I thought the most radical thing in it was that he would resign if he didn't introduce ranked ballots to the next Ontario election and give the option to municipalities.
This political scientist feels another system, proportional representation, is probably fairer, but he sees ranked ballots as an improvement over the current system. The Liberal leader made one more promise.
An Ontario Liberal government will also launch a pilot project to analyze the potential for a 4-day work week.
Bold promises from a party that's already being attacked by the PCs.
He was Wynn's right-hand man when they sent your hydro bill skyrocketing.
And the New Democrats.
Kathleen Wynn's right-hand man.
Just one indication, the party that finished a distant third the last time could be a much stronger competitor next spring. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
For the first time since the COVID pandemic hit, runners laced up in person and took part in the Scotiabank Waterfront Marathon. Dale Manuktuk was there at the finish line, soaking up the sun, the sweat, and tears of joy, and maybe a little pain.
You wouldn't know from the grimacing faces, the gasp for air, and obvious pain. But for the thousands who crossed the finish line, it was worth the nearly 2-year wait.
I'm 44 years old. I smashed my time. It's amazing out here.
You know, perseverance is everything. It's all about the mental discipline in my mind.
Just the whole camaraderie and just you get exhilarated and you just get sucked up with the crowd.
I believe our 50th wave.
50 waves of 100 runners went out in the largest race to come to Canada since the pandemic hit last March.
I feel overjoyed being here today.
The Canada Running Series worked with the Ministry of Health and Toronto Public Health to ensure the event was safe, vaccination and masks were required.
And like our industry as a running industry has been coming together during this pandemic. Best practices, the Boston Marathon just took place, Chicago, all of us are learning from each other.
The event doubled as the Athletics Canada 10K Championships, drawing some of the country's top distance runners to Toronto to compete for the Canadian title.
It doesn't matter if you're the elite, fastest person in the crowd or the last person. The endorphins are flowing. You know how big it is to cross that finish line at the end of a 10K or a marathon.
Since the spring of 2020, several of the runners, both elite and recreational, participated in virtual events, but nothing compares to running with a large group.
And I think runners are the best people in the world. I think runners are just they just want to support each other.
It's so nice to see everybody with signs out there and cheering us on.
Like the buzz of all the people kind of keeps you going.
The marathon is continuing virtually until November 15th. 151 local charities are accepting donations. The Canada Running Series hasn't locked in a firm date, but hopes to be back in person for another event in 2022. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Toronto.
Meantime, in just over 3 weeks, fully vaccinated Canadians will be able to cross the land border into the U.S. But today, the federal public minister told CBC that Ottawa is sticking to a costly requirement. When coming back home into Canada, people will have to get a mandatory PCR test. The CBC's Rafi Pujikanian has reaction from both sides of the border.
I'm really happy they made this decision.
The reopening can't happen fast enough for grocery store owner Ali Hayton in Point Roberts, Washington. To get there, Americans have to drive through Canada. Before the pandemic, most of her customers were Canadian.
When they announced the closure extension in June, I just kind of threw up my hands at that point.
Hayton is relieved the border is open, but she's worried Canadian shoppers will stay away since they still have to provide negative PCR tests to re-enter Canada.
90% of Point Roberts residents are vaccinated. Canada, British Columbia especially, those people their vaccination numbers are high. So I think adding that, $200 test every time somebody wants to come down and buy gas or pick up a package or grab a gallon of milk is really prohibitive.
Some American politicians have the same concern.
I think if you're vaccinated and have a rapid negative test, I think we're trying to make perfect the enemy of the good, and it just doesn't work for our economies.
But today on Rosemary Barton Live, the public safety minister said it's here to stay for now.
It's been a very effective protection for Canadians. Our provincial partners, they're also very concerned about ensuring that people coming across those international borders can do so safely.
This doctor says keeping PCR tests in place makes medical sense at the moment.
Our data is evolving all the time, and there is still a bit of a moving target in terms of understanding the likelihood of carrying virus after vaccination and being able to spread it. I think that you could probably make a numbers argument once we have, slightly firmer data on the reduction of transmission.
When the land border reopens on November 8th, Americans won't need to provide negative PCR tests when returning home by land, but air passengers will, meaning a complete return to normalcy remains limited there too. Rafi Pujikanian, CBC News, Ottawa.
Turning to the daily COVID numbers now, Ontario reporting just under 500 new cases and 5 more deaths. 67% of the new cases occurred in people who are not fully vaccinated or whose status is unknown. At this point, there are more than 3,900 active cases in the province. Police in Kingston, Ontario say an officer was injured after thousands of partygoers packed an unofficial homecoming event yesterday. The crowd ignored warnings from Queen's University to stay away from this weekend's celebrations. At one point, police say projectiles were thrown at officers. This video was widely shared on social media, showing many in the crowd seemingly ignoring public health measures around masks and distancing. The university said the partiers were reckless and called the behavior inexcusable. Meantime, a notorious gang in Haiti is suspected in the apparent kidnapping of missionaries from a U.S. Christian aid organization. About 17 missionaries and their family members were returning from an orphanage. The news follows a recent wave of gang-related abductions in Haiti. At least 328 kidnapping victims were reported between January and August. It's believed that one of the missionaries is Canadian. The organization says it's now working with the U.S. Embassy on efforts to get them back. The Crown is set to begin their closing arguments tomorrow in the trial of Corey Fenn. Fenn is facing 3 counts of second-degree murder charges. The body of Krasimira Pechanovsky was found in her Ajax home in March 2018, alongside her 15-year-old son, Roy, and 13-year-old daughter, Vanilia. Fenn is representing himself in the judge-alone trial. He has said he will not be testifying. Closer to home, today marks 3 years since cannabis was first legalized in Canada. Since then, marijuana users have been able to buy and consume products from local dispensaries. We went out this evening and asked Torontonians what they think has changed over the last 3 years.
No, I feel like it's been 3 years, but I think it's an amazing thing. I think it's a really good thing to take a little bit of the black market aspect out of it, and I think it's safer. I feel safer for sure.
Like the more that you can find it more safely and like more respectable kind of stores instead of like on the street where it might not be as, like safe. I think it's better that it's more accessible.
The younger generation, their opinions have definitely changed, but I think the older has like way to go.
Well, as an environmental studies student at the University of Toronto, I can say that smoking is actually harmful for our environment. And while that's unfortunate that there has been a great increase in smoking weed since it's been legalized, however, the happiness level of people might have risen since then.
It's pretty normalized at this point. Like, I don't really see a huge difference between it and alcohol. I think it comes down to safety. Whenever you would buy it in a legal sense, you had no idea what was in it, whereas at least with the regulation, there's that element of safety where you don't have to worry too much.
Taking a look at Ottawa, where it's 8 degrees right now, and it looks like the chilly, cloudy weather will stick around for a few days. We'll get all the details here from Sophia Kambalia from the Weather Network. I will admit I pulled out the slightly warmer jacket today.
Yeah, I went for a walk with the kids and I thought, you know what? I think I need the hat and the mitts for the first time. Got to get the totes out from the basement. But did you see some of the sunshine that came out today and the rainbows that were all over the GTA in Southern Ontario? It was beautiful. We had a lot of activity as well, around 11 right now. Still some of these lake effect showers going on with those warmer lake waters, ton of activity, a bunch of water spouts reported and seen on social media as well. So very active day. Showers could continue into the overnight, so do the single digits, and this really gusty northwest wind. It will be with us for the next 24 hours or so. It's that Arctic chill where you might need to pull out the hat and the mittens for morning school drop-off. Single digits. It's been a rarity for October mornings as of late when we've had this really nice summer stretch. Will be seasonal by Monday afternoon. The sun will come out. The clouds will clear, especially Monday evening into Tuesday. And Tuesday is the day to beat. 20-degree warmth is back, and so is summer 3.0, I think you can say it. We will add to this stretch of above seasonal warmth as we have had pretty much every day in October, except for October the 4th. What happens in the long range, though? Things fall off the edge.
Ooh. Let's try to stick with summer 3.0. I love it. Thanks,
like it
Sophia.
too.
A celebration today for moms from across the city. Mom Fest is an annual 2-day event. This year it's a hybrid of virtual and in-person get-togethers. It's also the first time the community has gotten together since COVID halted large gatherings. Organizers say the return of Mom Fest puts a spotlight on the rise of the mom boss. Today's event featured a market made up of businesses started by women, some who put their careers on hold when the pandemic hit as their kids switched to online learning.
You can't even describe the energy. It feels so good to be in living color, back together with our mom community, and we're really excited to be trailblazing into the indoor event arena. The energy is electric.
The festival wraps up tomorrow with a gala and an online auction with more than 50 items up for bidding. Organizers hope to raise at least $10,000. Proceeds will go to Sick Kids Hospital. A Hall of Famer from hockey's original Six era has died. Leo Boivin played 19 NHL seasons. The former Leafs player from Prescott, Ontario, started his career in 1952 with the Toronto Maple Leafs. He played with the Boston Bruins for 12 years before playing with Detroit, Pittsburgh, and Minnesota. The Leafs tweeting their condolences to the family today, saying, "We are deeply saddened to learn of his passing." He played 137 regular season games and 5 playoff games with Toronto. 1986, you see there, he was inducted into the Hockey Hall of Fame. He was 89. Meantime, the Leafs are back in action tomorrow night with superstar Austin Matthews expected to take the ice for the first time this season. They may just be a few games in, but the Buds are still haunted by demons from last season. As Greg Ross shows us, it was all documented in a new reality series. He caught up with Matthews and Coach Sheldon Keefe to talk more about the doc and those demons.
I'm going to guess that this whole documentary did not end the way that you were hoping. I think that's fair to say.
That's a pretty good guess.
Austin Matthews is clearly ready to move past last year's disappointment.
Deja vu again for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
But Matthews says the series All or Nothing on Amazon Prime, which documented all of last season for the Leafs, isn't all bad.
It was a different experience, but I think it was a lot of fun. And I think, despite the ending, we had a lot of really good memories throughout the year.
The Leafs allowed cameras to follow them around every day, gathering thousands of hours of footage for the 5-part series. It was a year many thought the Leafs could have gone all the way. Instead, they once again failed to get past the first round of the playoffs. Not the outcome fans were expecting, but still riveting.
You knew that potential was there, and that's the reality of pro sports. Like you're saying, it is incredibly difficult to win, not just in the playoffs, but even the regular season, day to day.
Goodbye, Toronto Maple Leafs.
Immediately after the Leafs were eliminated, videos from fans like this one started surfacing online. The collective anger of the Leafs fan base didn't go unnoticed by the team.
And you've got a great responsibility to the fans and to our organization, and when you fail, it sucks.
While that loss now lives on in this documentary, head coach Sheldon Keefe says the Leafs have begun a new chapter.
The show certainly is over, but our show certainly goes on. I mean, we're trying to build upon last season and push past the disappointment to be able to give this a different ending.
The last time the Leafs made it past the first round of the playoffs was 2004. The last time they won a Stanley Cup was 1967. They may need to end both of those droughts before winning back the respect of some fans. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
A new department at the AGO dedicated to the arts of global Africa is celebrating its first year and first full exhibit. It's called Fragments of Epic Memory. As Jessica Ing shows us, more than a third of the artists have ties to Toronto and Canada.
This is a Caribbean story, but it's also a Canadian story as well. We've been thinking about this exhibition since 2019 when we acquired the Montgomery Caribbean Photography Collection. Kind of trove of about 4,000 photographs, ephemera, related to a particular period in Caribbean history. So it really documents that period just after emancipation in 1838. This is a period where inhabitants are still very much tied to a kind of structure that required kind of exploitative labor. And the photographs really reflect this period, this kind of shift in kind of plantation economies. What you're seeing is this the kind of lived experience of inhabitants of mostly British Caribbean, but also French Caribbean and a little bit of the kind of Hispanic Caribbean as well. We don't really mine this history enough, especially through the visual culture. I think this is a kind of rare opportunity to see this this moment in history.
This piece has a really unique texture. What goes into making this?
This is a cyanotype, which is an early photographic process. What Andrea Chung has done is attached or embedded sugar crystals to the work. And this is a kind of coral scape. This attachment to the history of plantation economies and sugar.
The piece is called Maroonscape 1, Cockpit Archipelago. And it takes this area of Jamaica called Cockpit Country. What's interesting about Cockpit Country, they used the natural terrain itself and their knowledge of that terrain as a way to evade the British. The Maroons are seen as both exemplary of freedom and liberation, but then also the compromises that came with that. Caribbean communities have existed in Canada for a very, very long time. My family immigrated in the 70s. There's a long history of Caribbean communities, specifically in Ontario. Globalization got a big boost with slavery, sadly. It's a place where you can work through the ramifications of our ongoing exploitation of Black bodies and of Indigenous lands.
Jessica Ng, CBC News, Toronto.
Given the cliffhanger at the end of your first forecast about things falling off the edge, I think it's time maybe to head indoors to the AGO, check out that new exhibit.
Yeah, it looks fantastic. I was definitely interest peaked watching all of that. And how about the interest peaked watching the long range forecast now? Okay, so we left off here at the chance of a run of more above seasonal warmth. We didn't have it on October the 4th. We probably won't get it tomorrow, but we will for sure see it Tuesday into Wednesday. Look at that, 20 degrees, Burlington, Pickering, Markham. Summer 3.0, we have officially coined it, copyrighted it. Wednesday, tons of sun as well. Tuesday into Wednesday, some 21s there as well, right downtown. It will be lovely, it will be balmy, soak it up, because I don't think it's gonna be a sign of things to come. It will be because of this big ridge of high pressure. It will be setting up shop, keeping any of the low pressure systems at bay for a 2-day warm-up event and bringing in that southerly flow. And then Wednesday afternoon, evening is when that cloud deck comes back in, that active weather stretch returns, and so does a troughing wet pattern all day Thursday. Kind of a rainy day, big temperature drop Thursday into Friday. And then for next weekend, we are back to seasonal values, which will feel like a real shock to the system like it did for much of today and yesterday. And those cool overnight lows in the single digits. But talking about things taking a dip, the lakes have been the place to be. Did you know that some of them are at the warmest water levels that we've seen in 25 years? Lake Superior, for example, is the warmest it's ever been on record. It's an anomaly to have temperatures off the graph really this time of year. If you want to take one last dip, Tuesday will be the day with all the sunshine.
You'd have to be pretty brave to do that. Summer 3.0, though, we'll take it while we can. Thanks so much.
You're welcome. See you soon.
The chilly morning was a perfect time to get out for a run. Congratulations to everybody who took part in the Scotiabank Waterfront Marathon today. Here they are. Hope you have a great night.